Hello everyone, this is Siamack Salaris from Ethos and Everyday Lives, and I'm going to talk to you about some of the misunderstandings and miscommunications of mobile qualitative research or mobile ethnographic research. So let me begin with a little bit of background. Why did we come up with a mobile platform? Well, actually, it wasn't to sell to anybody. We did it for ourselves. It was, and still is, incredibly expensive to send filmmakers, film being an integral part of the ethnographic research that we do, filmmakers into the field, not because of the time that they spend in the field, but because they spend roughly 2 or 3 times that period afterwards editing, grouping, bucketing all the films and edits together for us to then work through and do analysis of. So it was really a way of replacing the video cameras and enabling our researchers to actually tag and capture events and tag them in the field so that by the time they arrived back, the content was waiting for them and they could simply edit it and work with it from there and add, we could all collaboratively do analysis and add meanings to the content. It also allowed a lead researcher to monitor what was going on. So somebody back at the base, if you like, could see everything that was coming through and then share ideas with other researchers. So be able to show them, hey, look, so-and-so has come up with this. Is there anything similar going on in your market or in your territory or whatever it might be? Before, we would literally have to do this by flying that individual from country to country. Because most of our projects are multi-country studies. So literally, it would be me starting in Poland, seeing the progress, collecting some of the best edits, moving to Thailand, and then sharing them, collecting some of the best edits. So it was kind of cumulative, very, very costly, and time and labor intensive. And what I also wanted to be able to, as well as eliminating that, was to be able to share progress easily with clients. So are we on the right track? Is this what you thought you were going to see and what you were going to get? If not, isn't necessarily a bad answer, because we could then work on it and challenge their preconceived ideas. But you get the gist of what I'm trying to say. It was to engage clients and bring them into the loop. So it's been a mixed reality. I've just gone through what I wanted to do, but actually most of our employees, in other words the filmmakers, just couldn't believe I was asking them to use their iPhones and Android phones to go about filming stuff. For a start, with a video camera you can film continuously without stopping. With these devices you're typically capturing 3 or 4 minutes at the most before having to send it and then capture the next event. So, or tag it and then capture the next event. So people were using it as a backup camera, not as the main camera. And this was a really difficult cultural change that I had to force people through. In the end we succeeded, but that's another story, it's another presentation. The other thing was that I expected it to be for people like us to go and do filming with it of respondents. In fact, 98% of the clients and agencies who use our platform have respondents doing their own autoethnographies. So it's completely, the other way around, the sort of tail wagging the dog. And but tagging and sorting was speeded up. But instead of, creating or shortening the overall period of the research process, the time that we had free, we found that we were actually spending more engaging with the respondents, so asking questions, sending our own comments through to them, etc., etc. So in reality, if I was to be completely honest, there was no real time saving. But it did allow a lead researcher to monitor progress. This is hugely, hugely important for quality and consistency, and the ability, as I've already said, to share this progress with clients who, incidentally, unless it's a really engaged client who's interested in the process, most of them are just interested in the end results, unless we see something really interesting that we think is important to share with them. Now, the reason why mobile isn't all that it seems, I've listed into two groups. So I've divided it between participant observation and the kind of self-autoethnographies that take place. But before I launch into this, I need to stress that you can do both with mobile devices. Participant observation does not need to be conducted, cannot only be conducted with a video camera. You can use a mobile device to do it as well, very, very effectively. So the big difference is when you are in the field doing the observation, it's much, much easier to capture the sorts of things that clients crave, which are those naturally occurring events and happenings, spontaneous happenings, discussions, decisions that are made, real life, not prompted. Whereas with self-ethnographies, you're asking people to film themselves and those around them. So it's much, much harder to actually capture events that are spontaneous and naturally occurring. Most of it is sort of slightly retrospective and show and telly in nature. With participant observation, there's no, we never asked questions while we were filming anyway, because we didn't want to disrupt behavior. Questions always come afterwards, either at the end of the day or a few days later, when we can take the films back and ask them to narrate them for us. But with the self-ethnographies, people are actually talking through the content themselves. They're explaining what's going on. And by definition, they're self-editing. And one of the important things about, which I really love about autoethnographic data, is that the content that you receive it's no longer just about that content, just about that film, because the decision that was made to send you that film or that clip is data in itself. Okay, so why did they send you what they sent you? Why are they showing you the things that they're showing you? Again, under participant observation, we don't tell respondents. We still don't like telling people what we're there to do because we don't want to bias them towards particular brands or products. Yet with self-ethnography, well, of course they will know what we're there to explore and what we're trying to learn and understand because it's embedded in the tasks. And then you have this whole thing about respondent fatigue. How many tasks can they perform a day? How much can you actually give them to do? Well, with self-ethnography, with participant observation, you can control this because you can just stop filming. But with participant observation, we do have situations where people feel compelled to meet their quota of films or video by just capturing nonsense sometimes or material that just isn't very good. So it increases your workload just occasionally having to filter through the stuff that is done for the sake of it. It doesn't happen that often, but you need to be aware of it. Now, the challenges of actually doing autoethnography also are as follows. Most people are not natural filmmakers. They've never used a video camera, or if they do, it's just to shoot, a funny incident or their child singing a song maybe for a few seconds. Not actually, smooth footage that you could potentially use in a final edit for the client. So what we tend to do, the way to fix it is through clever editing, but also we have what we call benchmark films, so example films that we post onto the project for people to look at the kind of quality that we're after, holding the camera in landscape rather than portrait, or rather their device in landscape rather than portrait, and so on and so forth. And these benchmark films really, really do help give people an idea of the style that we're after. And they tend to follow it, and it doesn't bias the things that they capture for us. And also, people rarely film longer than 2 minutes. This has nothing to do with the capabilities of the mobile device. I just did a cleaning project, which I presented at the MRS last week, which two separate respondents had sent 10-minute long high-definition videos, via their iPhones. And these were 1.6 gigabytes in size. Okay, and they were sent via the iPhone to our platform. Biggest ones I've ever seen. Typically people will film 45 seconds though. That's the reality of it. 30 seconds, 45 seconds. Which means that editing actually is really, really simple, and bucketing the films is very, very straightforward. The tasks need to be really carefully designed, because there's a big difference between the kind of show and tell stuff and if you want to elicit sort of emotional responses about people's feelings and what have you. I remember a client recently saying to me, Siamack, don't underestimate the importance of audio. You know, with video recordings, people are always feeling compelled to show you things with video-based tasks or with photo-based tasks. With audio, they can relax. They can talk and talk and talk, and often it's the fantastic way of getting under people's motivations and emotions. So, although our apps allows audio recordings, this potential was a complete surprise to us. We really, really didn't think that audio would be such a powerful component. We were putting all of our emphasis on the fact that you could send photos and video. The other point is, the other big challenge is onboarding. By onboarding, I mean actually the very first step, which is once you've recruited your respondents, getting them onto the platform so that they can send content from their devices. And this can make some of us be reduced to tears. Even though it's the easiest process you can imagine, it's simply username and password and you're logged in. People still have problems. People have issues with the fact that they don't use case-sensitive letters. They don't have the correct version of the operating system. There are so many things that we need to think about all the time that has nothing to do, I mean, there's nothing else that we can think of to do with improving the app. Although there is actually one thing that we've thought about, which I will probably say for another talk, but we're still developing it. But onboarding with any platform is going to be a challenge, and the easier it is, the better. And I think a lot of platform providers are working hard at this to make it easier for respondents. Despite these challenges, I'm a firm believer that mobile really will change everything. Partly because we're moving towards features on these platforms where you won't actually need to recruit people. People walking past a QR code or any kind of link can simply scan, download the app, and go. In other words, have the project ready, embedded, ready to go, without ever having to be invited to it. So they can literally do this on entering car showrooms, reading a magazine article, and this is why this kind of recruiting, what I call, if ever you've heard our wild apples talk versus orchards, which are kind of recruited, pre-recruited, carefully screened respondents. Yes, with wild apples, you're going to get much more dud apples, but you're going to get an awful lot of really fantastic apples, far tastier and juicier than anything you'll get from an orchard. So that's my analogy for that. You're going to get real people by the thousand. You're also going to get unprecedented intimacy and immediacy. So this thing about in the moment is not to be confused with naturalistic, but they are capturing events in context as they happen. And because they're devices, these devices are their companions, if you like, in some ways. You know, they carry them everywhere. They sleep next to them, for goodness sake. The level of intimacy, the sorts of things they capture for you, I have never seen in all the years, 15 years of doing participant observation. I've never seen this kind of data before. It really is mind-blowing. And also, it does emancipate respondents, so they can engage with the project. We're doing a lot of studies now where, in fact, we'll be talking about this in April at the MRMW. We're doing a lot of talks where we're getting respondents to look at each other's entries and to score them and to bucket them and to code them. So this doesn't replace your coding and analysis, but it adds to it and it speeds it up. So really, really important things to bear in mind. Some of the things we still need to understand, that mobile won't replace many current methods. I really don't think, I mean, if people go about trying to tout it as a replacement for this and that, it's just not going to be the case. So for me, it's always been, as a qual researcher, ethnographic researcher, this tool has always been another way of slicing the consumer cake. So it's never going to replace me going into the field and doing participant observation. But in fact, what it's doing is it's making that process much, much more efficient. Because I can get people started on doing autoethnographies, and when the content comes in, I can decide who to go in home with, rather than doing the shotgun approach, which is much more time-consuming and costly. So as a mixed combination method, it is absolutely fantastic. Combine it with groups where people capture events and then bring them in and talk about them. This has happened numerous times now. It's a great way of working with it. So some of the best groups occur with this approach, when you can actually have sessions that are warm. In other words, you know who these people are before they walk in, and you've already seen their content, and you can share it with them and ask them to explain it. Now, analysis is really critical, and I think it's really important that we don't think of mobile platforms as simply galleries for video content or photos or whatever people are capturing. They need to be much, much more than that. And I think the best way of describing the route we're going down is that Joanna Czernaska has described the kind of content that comes in as Lego pieces. Think of them as Lego pieces that need to be sorted by group and grouped by color, shape, and size, and also reduced. So reduce the duplicates, get rid of them, get rid of the dud ones, so that you've got the best and you've organized them by color, shape, and size. And then, of course, you use these to build your ideas, concepts, theories for the clients. This is an analogy. You'll start to build shapes. But very often, you get to the point where you realize that actually this argument that you were putting forward, you don't have enough material for it. It doesn't happen often enough, or the variations are too extreme. And then you need to go back to the raw data. And this is really critical with any research platform, is that you need to have almost like an audit trail for every entry to see how it got to where it did, what were the notes that were attached to it, how was it grouped and regrouped and merged into other buckets. So it needs to allow you to go back quickly to the raw content, the individual bits, colors, shapes, and sizes, and then select new ones to maybe reshape the concepts or theory that you were putting forward. So this moving back and forth from a kind of helicopter view down to entries, individual entries, is absolutely vital for analysis and meaning / insight interpretation. Another really important point, we now have people going around capturing respondents, capturing events for us, and they'll film other people. We will film them with these devices. What are the implications from a privacy and ethics point of view? Well, the EU has 12 golden rules of ethical research, and one of them says informed consent gives the subject a sense of control over their personal information, or alleviates the fear that the data or samples or information will be retained or used in any other unintended manner. This is particularly important because what they're referring to, this unintended manner, is mission creep. By mission creep, I mean, I explained to a respondent this is going to be used by a client in workshops to brainstorm ideas. Great. 3 months later, 6 months later, I got a call from the client saying, Can they use it at a conference? This is called mission creep. We need to go back to the respondent. Often you can't find that respondent. You don't want to annoy the client because it's opened another door to where you can get back into dialogue with them and discuss new things. You don't want to say no to them. What do you do? Well, in my view, there is actually no such thing as informed consent because context, mode, and attitude changes over time. Everything changes. If somebody gives you informed consent over their image that you've captured over a day and you're paying them money for it, damn it, they want that money. You know, they're going to sign that piece of paper. Might be months later that they wish they hadn't. But this is why I think mobile tools can really turn things around, because for the first time, we're able to, for every event that we capture, send a receipt link to the respondent so that the image that we've captured is there as a link that they can access, view in their own time, and decide whether or not they want it to be used, and then give you their permission. Or else they say, remove me. And over time, so longitudinally, they can track what happens to it. Every time it's downloaded, who downloads it, what's it going to be used for, and also give you time to say, no, I don't want it to be used in this conference, and even to freeze access to it from a certain point onwards. So I think these sorts of technologies will completely transform the way people control their images and their content. Getting towards the end of my talk now, so where is mobile research today? Where is it going? Well, today, now, it's being described by certain people, some of whom I know very well, and I find it slightly irritating, but it's absolutely true, really, as the Wild West, because there are so many players in this field, from quant to qual, from technology people who have no experience of research to researchers who have no experience of technology. In my case, it's slightly different because I've employed those people and they're part of our team and we all work very closely together. From those who want to license their platforms, we fall into that category, and license it only, and to those who want to provide consultancy. So you can't really use the platform unless you buy the whole package. So my message to you is enjoy, decide who you go with, choose on a bunch of people, and enjoy the opportunity. We're all after your bucks, your research projects, and test drive these platforms for free. Make sure you don't pay anybody to test drive them. And then when you've found your favorite ones, assign someone to champion it within the organization. So just to end with a quick anecdote, one client's reason why our platform was so popular with his team was that it allowed people to go home early or on time. In other words, because it's mobile, it doesn't matter where you do it from, or where you moderate from, or where you carry out the study from. And this was a huge reason behind why so many employees, so many colleagues were coming and asking to do an ethos study. But of course, this applies to any mobile platform and not just ours. Thank you for listening.